Someone had to be the one to say this out loud, so it might as well be me. Right now, while you're watching this, there's a quiet assumption running in the back of your mind that the life you have is just the way things are. That the alarm clock, the commute, the job you stopped loving years ago, the chips and the streaming binge at night to numb the noise in your head before bed, that all of it is simply normal. And here's the part almost nobody wants to look at directly. Most people aren't actually living, they're surviving. And the difference between those two words is the entire reason some men climb and most stay stuck dreaming. Stick with me, because by the end of this, I'm going to walk you through the 5 traits that separate the men who rise from the men who spend their whole lives explaining why they didn't. Fair warning, some of this is going to sting a little. I'm not saying it to be cruel. I'm saying it because I lived every word of it myself. Let's start with a number that should bother you more than it does. There are roughly 8 billion people walking this planet right now. And if you look honestly at how they spend their days, only a tiny sliver of them are truly awake to their own lives. The rest are on autopilot. They wake up to a buzzing phone, reach for it before their feet even touch the floor, drag themselves through a day that drains them, and tell themselves that changing anything is too risky. There's the mortgage, there's rent, there are kids who need shoes, so they stay. And the staying feels safe, even though it's slowly costing them everything. Now look at the money, because the money tells the same story in cold numbers. Research on global wealth has consistently shown that the wealthiest 1% of people control somewhere close to half of all the wealth on Earth. That's not a conspiracy theory whispered in a basement. That's just arithmetic. A very small group sets the rules, holds the resources, and decides where the opportunities flow. And everyone else, and I'm including a younger version of myself in this, ends up fighting over the crumbs that fall off the table, living paycheck to paycheck, quietly terrified that a tooth will crack or a laptop will die because there's no cushion to catch it. Too nervous to ask for a raise because, well, times are tight, and at least you have a job, right? Hunting for a promo code at checkout and feeling like you just outsmarted the whole system when you save $11, never noticing that the system already outsmarted you a long time ago. I want to be clear before we go any further. I'm not here to judge you. I'm not here to compare you to anyone. I walked this exact road. I made these exact excuses. The reason I'm even talking about this is that for the last several years, I've been obsessed with one question. How do the people at the very top actually think? Not the ones who were handed everything at birth, the ones who clawed their way up from nothing. I've spent hundreds of conversations, in private, over dinners, in long, honest talks, with founders, executives, and people who built real fortunes from scratch. And out of all of that, I pulled 5 traits that show up again and again in the men who made it on their own. Men who walked straight through failure, through collapse, through private wars nobody saw, and came out the other side as someone new. So that's what we're unpacking today. Watch this all the way through, because each trait builds on the last, and the full picture only makes sense once you've seen all 5. And yes, this one is aimed mostly at the guys, but if you're a woman watching, stick around too, because understanding how this works will help you read the world a whole lot more clearly. So here's the first trait, and without it, nothing else even gets off the ground. The men who rise know how to take responsibility. That sounds almost too simple, doesn't it? But it is genuinely one of the rarest and most decisive abilities a person can have, especially right now. We're living through a strange moment where an entire generation has been taught that discomfort is something to be escaped rather than carried. People take a job, leave for lunch, and simply never come back because showing up, apparently, violates their personal boundaries. The market is flooded with people who don't keep their word, who don't finish what they start, who won't carry the smallest weight on their own shoulders. And here's the genuinely funny part. The bar is so low that simply being reliable makes you stand out like a lighthouse. Just become the person who does what he said he'd do, and watch your competition quietly disappear. Because most people fold at the starting line, and they fold with a flawless set of excuses ready to go. The pay is too low. And why is that? Obviously because the boss is a jerk. Not because the person never once walked in and asked, what would it take for me to grow here? What else can I take on? No, that's too much effort. It's easier to sit there resentful, convinced you're underappreciated, while you quietly waste your hours doing the bare minimum. Or there's the classic one, showing up late. Why? Traffic, of course. Brother, did you genuinely not know the city has traffic every single morning? Maybe leave 15 minutes earlier, maybe take the train. Or maybe the truth is that other people's time just doesn't register as real to you. Or the most basic failure of all, blowing a deadline you set for yourself. Think about what that actually means. You couldn't even organize your own task, the one you assigned to your own self. And you want to talk about growth, about leading a team, about building something? If you give your word, you keep it. That's the whole foundation. And then there's the deeper layer of excuses. The relationship that won't work because, the whole institution of family is broken these days. The idea that you turned out this way because there was no strong example for you growing up. I'm not even going to spend much time on those because they all come from the same well. They're all just elegant ways of setting the responsibility down somewhere outside yourself so you have a comfortable explanation for why your life doesn't look the way you want it to. Now flip it around and look at the men who choose the other path. The ones who actually treat their lives as something precious. They live by one quiet internal rule, and it goes something like this. This is my life, and everything inside it is my responsibility. They own all of it. The outcome, the process, the people standing next to them. Profit dropped this quarter? Fine. Time to change the strategy. Body's gone soft, energy's gone flat, back to the gym. The goals blurred, the dreams faded, the drive to move forward just evaporated one morning. They don't disappear into a bottle or a streaming queue or a long rant about how unfair the world is. They sit down in silence and start digging. Where did this come from? Why now? What's actually happening inside me? That kind of man can absorb an enormous amount of pressure. He can carry decisions, consequences, a whole team, entire systems, and he doesn't crack under the weight. He grows through it. And that, today, is worth its weight in gold because it's so rare. I'll promise you something simple. Become that man and you'll rise fast. Not just in your career, but in every corner of your life. People will respect you. They'll be drawn to you. You'll be in demand everywhere you go. Honestly, that's not even advice at this point. It's closer to a law of nature because big results without responsibility are simply impossible. If everything in your life depends on forces outside you, then in a very real sense, you have no power at all. But if everything in your life depends on you, then you have leverage, you have influence, and you will get where you're going. Let's move to the second trait that sets these men apart. They play the long game. Let's slow down on this one. We live inside a feed of curated success. Everywhere you scroll, there's the image of arriving early. 22 years old, sitting in a rented sports car somewhere expensive, wearing a watch that costs more than 3 months of your salary. And honestly, there's nothing wrong with wanting that. I genuinely believe everyone should pass through that hunger. But here's the catch. Most people in their 20s and 30s are somehow convinced that all of it is supposed to happen tomorrow. They want to grab it fast, right now, with no foundation underneath, no map, no real sense of where any of it is even leading. So let me hand you one simple idea I want you to actually feel. Almost all of us wildly overestimate what we can accomplish in a single year, and we badly underestimate what we can accomplish in 3. From everything I've seen up close, not one person who's genuinely at the top thinks in short bursts. Nobody up there is itching to buy a nicer car this weekend or fly off to some beach this exact Friday. They think in a completely different way. They think about how to arrange their resources, their schedule, the people around them, so that in 5 or 10 years, they reach a level where the cars and the houses and the travel aren't goals anymore. They're just the ordinary texture of an ordinary day. And here's the key difference. In the moment, these people are willing to sacrifice comfort. They don't soothe themselves with shopping. They don't burn their last few dollars chasing a fun night out. They don't leap into some shady scheme for one more quick win. Why? Because they understand, deep in their bones, that every choice you make right here and now is quietly shaping where you'll stand later. And that applies to everything. How you pick your tasks, how you treat your training, your health, even the simple fork in the road between getting work done and heading to the bar. So if you want to land in that small group, if you want a high standard of living that's steady rather than borrowed and spiky, then forget about right now. Literally, stop making decisions like a kid throwing a tantrum on the floor of a store, screaming for the candy and the toy because he needs them this second. Start thinking 10 years out, And more importantly, start acting from that perspective. And look, if you're in a spot right now where you genuinely want change, but you have no idea where to point your focus or where to even begin, start with the simplest things. Start meeting new people. Start studying subjects you know nothing about, but that clearly have real potential down the road. The whole point is to begin building towards something larger than this weekend. Before I open up the next trait, let me ask you something. When you hear the words top 1%, who do you picture? For a lot of people, certain images flash up immediately. The celebrities, the politicians, the billionaires, the giant business names. And sure, they have money, they have power, they're on the front pages. But here's what most of them are missing. The thing nobody puts on the magazine cover: freedom. They're so tightly stitched into their own schedules, so bound to obligations and contracts and being physically present in the right room, that they don't actually run their own lives. Every day is a calendar. Every step is pre-approved and pre-arranged. And honestly, that is not a life I'd ever want for myself. So the third trait of the men I'm talking about is exactly this. They are free. When I started painting my own picture of the future, I realized something. I don't need all the resources in the world. What I need is freedom. Financial freedom, so I never have to think about what dinner costs. Freedom of place, so I can leave whenever I want and go wherever I want. And freedom of time, so that every single day belongs to me and not to somebody else's calendar. And if you miss this, if you ignore it while you're climbing, you won't be building a life. You'll be building a beautifully decorated cage. Let me give you a quick story from my own road. There was a stretch where I took on a project that, at first glance, looked like a genuinely incredible opportunity. Good money on the table, real upside, everything seemed to line up. But it became clear pretty fast that the entire thing was wired to me. I personally was the engine, which meant I was chained to an office, to one specific place I had to physically be all the time. And then the strange part started. The money did come in, but alongside every paycheck, a little more of my freedom quietly slipped out the door. And at some point, it hit me. I was paying for that income with control over my own life. That's the trap. On the surface, you feel like you're inching closer to financial freedom, but in reality, you've just swapped one set of bars for another. So now, with that lesson behind me, when I'm deciding where to put my energy, I will gladly take the project that pays me 3 times less if it lets me keep my freedom. Because in my view, freedom is where the real potential lives. It opens up the space where strong ideas are born, where projects actually grow, where energy and scale come from. The point was never to earn as much as humanly possible at any cost. The point is how you arrange your life, what choices you make, which limits you agree to live inside. And as long as you keep saying yes to a schedule somebody else designed, as long as you say yes to everything just because it's profitable, you are not playing the game the best players play. And the best players, every single time, choose freedom. Always. On to the fourth trait. The men who reach their goals don't go searching for their purpose. They work. Let me come back to that whole modern obsession, the one the media keeps feeding us. Everybody today wants to find their calling, their one true thing, to fall in love with their work so it all flows effortlessly and feels like pure joy. I'll be honest with you, however many times I personally tried walking that road, it never once led anywhere good. The idea that's closer to the truth for me is this: we love the things we're good at. That's my compass. Because nobody enjoys feeling like a loser. Nobody gets a thrill out of pouring years into nothing. Everybody loves a result, especially when it starts coming easily. So here's the real question. When does it actually get easy? Not, in my experience, the moment you find your purpose. It gets easy after you've already put in the hours, after you've stacked up the knowledge, the experience, the skills, after you tried things, got burned, figured them out, and then at some point, all the vectors finally lined up and the thing took off. Of course, sometimes you're doing something, you even have results, and you still don't enjoy it. So you conclude, this isn't me, this isn't my calling. But honestly, I don't think that's about purpose at all. I think it means one of two things. Either you don't have a clear goal, or the thing you're doing right now simply doesn't lead toward the goal you do have. And the answer isn't to wander off looking for some mystical purpose. The answer is to rebuild the goal, or rebuild the activity, until it actually fits into your long-term strategy. I've said this before, and I love repeating it. I've sat across from people who built genuinely enormous things, real heavyweights from business and media and sports. And I swear to you, not once did any of them tell me they were searching for themselves. Not one ever brought up purpose. Not a single one. What I heard instead was always the same kind of story. How they grinded, how they fell, how they got it wrong, how they stood back up and tried again and again and again, how they stacked experience year after year, and how at some point it all converged. The timing, the place, the people, the skill, and the breakthrough came. That's it. In my eyes, talking endlessly about your calling is just one more way to hand off responsibility. It's an excuse, a comfortable story to explain why you still haven't arrived anywhere. And notice how that loops right back to trait number 1. The people at the very top don't search for themselves. They build themselves. That's the distinction I really need you to absorb. Before I give you the 5th and final trait, I want to ask you something directly, because I read every comment on this channel. How old are you right now? And which of these traits do you feel like you're already living versus the one you know deep down you've been avoiding? Drop it below. I'm asking because the age you start working on this stuff genuinely changes how fast it compounds, and I want to see where most of you actually are. All right, the 5th trait. The men who hit their goals see life clearly. And I mean that literally. They stay sober. Now you might push back and say, that's nonsense. Plenty of successful people drink wine and whiskey and champagne. And yes, they do. But here's the catch again. As a rule, they do it once they're already on top. Once the system is built, once there's a team and there are processes and resources, once they can afford to switch off for an evening and nothing breaks. And even then, plenty of them don't. But people drank back in the day, you might say. Sure, except back in the day, a lot of things were different. Because back then, people were competing against others exactly like them. Guys who got hammered every Friday and had never heard the words sleep tracker or dopamine in their lives. Today, the whole field changed. Today, you were competing against young, driven, clear-headed people. The ones in the gym at 7 in the morning. The ones who sleep on a schedule, who pay attention to what they eat, who don't fog up their minds with just one glass to relax. And the conditions are the same for everyone. That's the key, which means the person who simply removes alcohol already gets a head start. He has more usable hours in his day, a sharper head, a higher baseline of energy. He doesn't lose a weekend to recovery. He doesn't drag through Monday at half power. He doesn't blow up his routine, and he isn't getting sick every couple of weeks. I'll tell you straight, I haven't had alcohol in over a year now. A couple of times across that whole stretch, I had a single glass of wine. And even then, the next day, I could feel myself running at maybe 75 or 80% of my normal output. Slower, more easily irritated. One glass, and you're already not quite yourself. So my rule is simple. You want to drink wine? First, earn your way into that top 1%. First, build the result. Show who you are, build the thing, get it off the ground, win, and then, by all means, do whatever you like, but not in the other order. If you don't want to, that's your call, no judgment. Just remember one thing. You're running the same race, on the same track, against the same guys, except you've strapped a 25 or 30-pound weight to your ankle. Maybe you still finish, but you will not have any advantage on that course. None. So yeah, this one ran a little sharp in places, maybe a little uncomfortable, but it was honest. And I think it might be the most direct, most straight to the jaw thing I've put out here on Brad Walker. We walked through 5 traits that don't require an ounce of talent, only will. 5 foundations that separate the people who build their lives on purpose from the people who simply exist. Let's run them back quickly. Responsibility, playing the long game, freedom as a priority, work over the search for purpose, and clarity, staying sober. That's the whole recipe. So if you genuinely want the picture of your ideal life to come true for you and not for somebody else, the next step worth considering is to start strengthening these 5 traits now. Not tomorrow, not Monday, now. Because every day you put it off is a day someone else out there gets a little stronger than you. Pick the one trait you've been dodging and take a single, real action on it today. Just remember, this is a video meant to make you think, not a substitute for personalized guidance from a qualified professional who actually knows your situation. Take what's useful, leave what isn't, and apply your own judgment. If any of this hit home, do me a quick favor and hit that like button. And if you're not subscribed yet, jump on board. We're pushing hard toward 1,000 subscribers, and you being here genuinely moves the needle. Tell me down in the comments which of the 5 landed hardest for you. I'll see you in the next one.